And welcome to the Daily Space Weather, folks. We are streaming live to Twitch. It's twitch.tv/smAsho if you weren't aware. I'm your host, Dan, aka smAsho. And if you're wondering what's going on with my eye, well, the Borg have tracked me down. We removed the implant. The Space Force failed to prevent the Borg from showing up. So thanks a lot, Space Force. Now I've got this stupid FLIR camera attached to my face again. And listen, it'll be our little secret. I'm going to remove it again. Please don't tell the Borg. Because then they're going to track me down. They're going to reinstall it. It's a real pain in the ass. And the main reason is because this Borg implant, see this? You think this is good? Well, you're wrong. You know why? Because it's made in China. Okay? China. It's made in China. Okay? If we would have brought manufacturing back to the U.S., it would work better. But this China, it's China. Anyway, we're looking at the sun in 193 angstroms here. And we got into geomagnetic storm conditions yesterday. We'll talk about it. First, we're going to talk about the 304 angstroms view. We're going to look at the full disk here on helioviewer.org. And here's the North Pole region. A bunch of filaments around there in the northwest. And we're looking for things like crown prominences and so on. So there's that HelioViewer movie. And we'll also take a look at the South Pole region. And there you have the South Pole area. Little bright spot down there associated with the South Pole. I'm talking about this one. And we see that in some other wavelengths also. Something to keep an eye on throughout the day. And when I say eye on, well, you get the idea. Anyway, here's the magnetic field view. And we don't see any sunspots. And here's 171 angstroms faded to the field. And actually, that area down there shows some magnetic complexity. So check that out. You can see it's bright there and also 171 angstroms, as well as 304 and 193. Possibly a sunspot forming there, really far south. Basically inside the south solar polar coronal hole. Now, our videos have been getting remonetized, so once again, props to YouTube. They're getting algorithmically demonetized because reasons, but then under manual review, the restrictions are being lifted. So far, so good, and thanks YouTube for not demonetizing the content. On that note, we are also on BitChute, so check out the content there. Some of it is exclusive, such as COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus cured via hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, a video that we put up on March 19th, and then people tried to gaslight us on the internet. And let me just put out a little message here about essential.
Hey, what's going on, Instagram types? I'm just up here driving. Here's the Renton Wilkes-Barre area. And I was just thinking about something. About essential. What's essential and what's not essential? I'll tell you what's not essential. Government! Government, not essential. You are essential. If some government is telling you you're not essential for whatever reason, I suggest that you audit them in any possible way that you can, because chances are they're incompetent and overpaid. So next time somebody tells you you're not essential, respond thusly. Ask them what their salary is and if they're paid by taxpayer dollars. Because chances are if they're paid by taxpayer dollars, they ain't essential.
Anyway, if you don't follow us on Instagram and Facebook, we are in those locations. It's instagram.com/smAshomash and facebook.com/smAshomash. We're also on Minds. And hey Minds users, why don't you sign up there and send us some tokens, as we need the ability to boost our posts again. We are running out of tokens right quick. Next, we're going to look at the full disk view here of 304 angstroms. It's another 48-hour view, and you can see that incredibly large sprite up in this area. It's a big ball of helium up there. And the 304 angstroms view is ionized helium spectra, by the way. Anyway, there's a 48-hour view there. We'll let that play through. And then we'll move on. There's plenty of stuff to cover, so don't go anyway. There's the KP index. You can see it got up to KP of 5 yesterday, a mild geomagnetic storm, and that was basically what I forecasted. So basically what I forecasted, I expected it to get to a 4 or a 5. There you have it. Now, spaceweather.com is reporting that it was a coronal mass ejection. And it looks like they were right based on the way it propagated. But there's another high-density wave hitting the Earth right now, or the magnetosphere at least. And anyway, there's articles about it on spaceweather.com. 10.7 centimeter radial flux down to 68. So staying on solar minimum style conditions as far as sunspot number and so on. No sunspots and a low 10.7 centimeter radial flux. Next, we'll look at where things are in the solar system. And now we're creating a very obtuse triangle between the Earth, the Sun, and Mercury, which is very spooky and scary because reasons. And people think that there's a Birkeland current connecting the Sun, the Earth, and Mercury, and connecting your ass to your elbow, probably. Next, we're going to look at a star chart. Here's where stuff is above my head. I like to use in-the-sky.org. And we're not paid to say that. They're not a real affiliate. Perhaps we'll get their webmaster or whoever runs the site on the channel sometime. If you've got a low horizon before sunrise, you should be able to see Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. And trailing them will be the moon, I believe, and then the sun. So it's a pile-up on the ecliptic. Next to goes X-ray flux. You can see it's got a little bit of activity kicking off there. And we won't use an X-ray imager as we can't find any. Next, the proton flux, and you can see a tiny little uptick there in the proton flux. Not really statistically relevant. Now, looking at the real-time solar wind, we just came off another quite high density blast here. It went up to over 30 protons per cubic centimeter just recently, and now it's scaled back down. So this is, once again, it's looking like a coronal hole wind stream to me. And spaceweather.com is reporting this was a coronal mass ejection yesterday. So there you go. And this looks like another similar type of a thing here. So once again, I'm going to have to say that's a coronal hole wind stream. I mean, I have no choice based on the data I see here. Now, we didn't get as high as I expected because that was a coronal mass ejection, not a coronal hole wind stream. It was very low speed, but this second wave here is stronger. It's we're seeing a higher density here. So anyway, the current conditions are 11.79 protons per cubic centimeter. Around 12, we'll say. And look at how high the BTBZ got here. This indicates North Pole solar magnetism. So the south kind of faded out, and we got a big magnetic pulse out of the north. And the BT was all the way up to 16 there. So that's finally coming down a little bit, and we're seeing more of a battle here between the north and south. If you see the red line here on the 0 line, that means an equal contribution to the solar magnetism from both poles. So right now we're seeing a little bit of convergence here and a little reduction in magnetism. Current solar wind speed around 350 kilometers a second. There's the latest data from ACE. And their particle collector still looks messed up, so hopefully it's not damaged. Next, we're going to look at the geospace magnetosphere movies, and we'll look at all three panes once again because we're seeing a significant density increase, while the solar wind speed remains basically at what you'd call background levels. Anyway, there's the velocity. And next we'll look at density. Wow, very high density plasma environment. That could be the densest that we've ever reported, actually. Check it out. Check out the shape. And you're talking about protons per cubic centimeter here in terms of density. Keep in mind, high density is shown in dark blue and low density is shown in white. Well, that is an oddity if I've ever seen one. And next we're going to look at pressure, and there is a lot of pressure. We're going to see a big uptick in the electron flux in the next 48 hours. So get ready for GPS errors and possible satellite drag, as satellites can get charged up if there are too many electrons up there. And we're going to have multiple Van Allen belts from a result from this incoming wind. So 2 in a row, and this one might be just as severe as yesterday's, if not even more so, as there will be some electron bridging involved, and we won't get into the physics of it today, as this is the daily space weather video, not a cosmology video. So try to study the sun if you're into cosmology, folks, because it's the Rosetta Stone for all of the rest of astronomy. If we don't understand how the sun works, how are you going to calculate the mass of a distant galactic core? Next, looking at ground geospace magnetic perturbations. And I'm seeing this for the first time. We're seeing pulses coming out of the South Pacific there. Right down in this area. This is 4 more hours of data, by the way. It's the Space Weather Modeling Framework, University of Michigan Geospace Model V1.5. Anyway, there are the ground magnetic perturbations during this polar excursion when we have 2 North Poles and a South Pole creeping off of the Antarctic continent into the southern Indian Ocean. Here's the GOES magnetometer, and we see very high readings there, a slight expansion of the scale, and this should come down to more reasonable levels today based on what we see on the real-time solar wind data. It's going to continue to look spiky though, and here's why. It's because we see various plasma densities. So you can see dense plasma, diffuse plasma, dense plasma, diffuse plasma, dense plasma, and that affects the way the magnetism reaches the magnetometers, folks. Keep in mind the data is 1 hour and 29 minutes old. The current sheet is completely charged up by the solar polar field of the south, shown here in red. And no changes to that coming soon, although we do see a small peek through of at least non-south pole polarity, a neutral zone. So there could be some activity approaching stereo A south of the solar equator. We won't get into it today, but if you want to look at it on ISWA, if you find anything, drop me a line. It's smashomash@gmail.com. So looking at the line of sight field plot here, keep in mind the magnetic environment can change with no warning. Anyway, there's that data. Welcome to the chat. Thanks for leaving a comment. Eden'll do. Relativistic electrons are still at quite low levels, as I forecasted these to remain very low throughout the coronal hole wind stream that I was expecting. Oh, we see a little spike in electrons there, otherwise very low. So we see a spike happening right here, right over places like Somalia and Saudi Arabia. So they would have seen some big GPS errors in those areas. And then back to very low levels, no surprise there. There's the GOES electron flux, and you can see how cratered that is. And we're expecting this to rise back well into warning levels within the next 48 hours. Here's the real-time ionosphere map, and we see a bit of an anomalous ionosphere as well. We see a highly discharged nighttime side, and you see a big red blob appear here. That's when the F2 layer becomes an F layer. And keep in mind this does happen at nighttime. Anyway, that's 6 hours of data. Here's the latest image. And it's looking a little anomalous on the sun side as well. So it's a bit wobbly in the ionosphere. No surprise there with the level of disturbances we see in the magnetosphere, which is, by the way, much farther out than the ionosphere. The ionosphere is practically your ceiling. The magnetosphere is something like, I don't know, 16 times the diameter of the Earth or something like that. Next, looking at windy.com, looking at pressure cells. We'll let this advance via the GFS forecast for about 24 hours. By the way, windy.com is a great mobile app. Perhaps check that out if you haven't. Install it on your smartphone. It will spy on you, but it will also provide great weather data. Anyway, there's where things will be around 1 p.m. tomorrow my time. Did you know that true noon happens during daylight savings time at 1 p.m.? Were you aware? Next, we're going to do a little bit of cosmology for once, throwing it in the daily space weather video. So today we're going to talk about NGC 2264. Here's a large image of it, and it is quite the interesting scenario. Check out the Primer field looking area over here. Looks a lot like a stellar jet. It's gigantic. And mainstream astronomy considers this a star-forming region, despite the fact that we've never seen a star form or die. Anyway, there's an interesting eclipsing binary in there. Two stars that orbit each other on a plane capable of causing them both to eclipse each other from the view on Earth. And eclipsing binaries are important for things like trying to calculate distances and so on. As we use things like the diameter and the spectra to estimate what the mass of these stars is, and I'm not going to get into why that's not appropriate, but in any case, perhaps read this article. It's on phys.org in the Space and Astronomy section. These are believed to be 0.29 and 0.26 solar masses. And again, that is based on things like the temperature. And again, if you want to look that up, there's some great images of it. And this is one that perhaps we should analyze a little further, as there are some interesting features. And also, one other thing, for all you people who think the universe is electric, you see this area right here? Guess what isn't there? Markland convection. If you don't know what Markland convection is, well, you're going to have to look it up yourself, as we'll talk about that in a different video. ALMA reveals unusual composition of interstellar comet, I believe it's 2L Borisov. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's going on with it? Well, there's a lot of carbon monoxide. So don't breathe the tail of Comet Borisov if you're out in space, because you could develop carbon monoxide poisoning. There's lots of carbon monoxide, which causes people to believe it formed in a different solar system. So it's believed to be not from our solar system for various reasons, and we won't get into it. Let's get back to current data. Looking at the last 24 of earthquakes, we see a deep quake striking Alaska. And we've seen many in that spot. And it looks like we see no 6+ magnitude quakes, but we see a deep quake striking Japan. It's in the south portion of the country. It's a 4.7 magnitude at 158 kilometers depth. Here's another deep quake in Afghanistan, and we've seen deep quakes there regularly for the past several weeks, in fact. Here's a deep quake in western South America. My favorite spot for a very, very large quake, like an 8 magnitude. That one's a 4.5 magnitude at 101 kilometers depth. And we're just going to scroll up the list. Take it as you will. I'm not the leading expert on earthquakes, but we report this daily on the Daily Space Weather. Such as this 4.7 at Peru. It's 159.9 kilometers deep. Here's a Papua New Guinea quake at depth. And everybody knows Oceania is an earthquake-prone zone, prone to earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and all kinds of other deadly stuff. Here's a 5.0 at Fiji at extreme depth, 557 kilometers. Let's just take a look at that one. That one located in between Fiji and New Zealand. And that area is indeed the deep earthquake capital of the world. Again, that's at 557 kilometers depth. And getting up the list here, let's move on to volcanoes. Klyuchevskoy is still exploding. Flight level 18,000, Mount Aso. Flight level 6,000 there. Semeru, flight level 14,000 there. Dacono, flight level 7,000 there. Rincon de la Vieja on Costa Rica suddenly exploded. A phreatic or hydrothermal explosion that generated a steam and ash plume that rose about 5,000 feet above the crater. Also, pyroclastic flows. Hopefully nobody was camping on the slopes of that, as they may now have created an empty space where their body used to be, and in a pile of volcanic ash similar to a Pompeian. Next, Sangay exploding as well. 20,000-foot plume there. And Sabancaya is exploding. It's producing a 27,000-foot ash plume. Please do not attempt to hang glide over the caldera. And before we get into COVIDiocy, Kim Jong-un, what's going on with Kim Jong-un? Have you heard? Turns out he may be in a coma. Apparently he had heart surgery last week, and perhaps it didn't go so well, as Kim Jong-un's probably not the most healthy guy as far as cardiovascular health goes. And it's been causing some issues in the markets. Now, I don't know why the idea that Kim Jong-un may die would cause markets to crash, and I'm not going to conjecture on it in any way, except to say that conflicting reports that North Korea's Kim Jong-un is in critical condition. And let's get into the COVIDiocy. Now, one thing that you may not understand is that UV light will kill it, and just let it work, let it do its thing, and see, gone. Now, we've created a web forum section specifically about #COVIDiots, as I believe this will be the word of the year. And here's one of Pennsylvania's favorite COVIDiots. We won't say who it is. Tom Wolf, if you're viewing the video, please leave us a comment and let us know what your middle name actually is. So if you want to contribute, you don't want to be super serious about it, head to the COVIDiots section of smAsho.com/forum. Also, have you read the Swiss propaganda research? It's swprs.org. And they'll probably update this today. Just scroll down and into the Fakten zu Covid-19 section and click on English, and then you'll be able to read about it. So as I was saying, UV light kills coronavirus, and the hackathon has been won by a solar cell-powered hand sanitizer. Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. Now, what are the exact spectra to kill germs? I don't know. But these are common in industrial food production areas. You'll see these things that look like black lights, and they are largely black lights. So solar-powered hand sanitizer wins hackathon. Don't sell your Purell for $9,000 an ounce when you can get a solar-powered hand sanitizer. And let's talk about why the lockdown must end. It's because your civil liberties and the economy is being crushed for no good reason, as it's not very deadly, the coronavirus. We're going to watch the mortality rate drop to 0.05 to 0.09%, if not lower, and we'll ultimately never really know. And some interesting facts coming out on the daily, and some interesting forecasts proven correctly on this channel on the daily. So cheers. We didn't expect to have to get so serious during solar minimum, but here we are. So the reason the shutdown must end is because you're all essential. Every one of you is essential, and if a government tells you that you're not essential, I suggest that the government's not essential. So we saw protests all across the country, both on Sunday and yesterday. Please leave a comment if you know how the one in Harrisburg went. I stayed the hell away. How deadly is COVID-19? Well, guess what? It's looking less and less deadly, as we've been forecasting since January 23rd, when we created this forum thread, and we updated it every day, except I think one day we didn't update it. So if you've got some interesting facts about COVID-19, a spooky, scary virus, well, leave a comment, set up a login at smashomash.com/forum. It's in the free-for-all forum. And the models suggesting high mortality rates and millions of deaths in the U.S. are laughed off of the planet. So anyway, how are you enjoying the pandemic? It's my favorite pandemic ever. And indeed, it's my first pandemic. Please don't treat it in an infantile fashion. Don't be a COVIDiot. As you've survived a global pandemic so far, and chances are you'll survive this one too, just like your ancestors did. Oh. Hey, thanks, son. None of that. And it's gone. Thanks. I'll get back to you. See you when you rise. Let's talk about polar bears. Oh my God, oh my God. The polar ice caps are melting. Now we're moving into summer in the northern hemisphere. And by the way, what drives polar bears into towns is when it's too cold, they're unable to get through the sea ice because there's too much sea ice to consume their favorite food, seals, which drives them farther south where people live. So if you're worried about polar bears, cold, like humans, kills polar bears. Cold kills polar bears and humans because it starves them to death. Polar bears are able to swim hundreds and hundreds of miles through open ocean, also, by the way, if you weren't aware. And they're so good at maintaining their heat that you don't even see them through a FLIR camera. They don't show up as a thermal signature. Anyway, here's a ridiculous article from the University of Hamburg, who's talking out their you-know-what, talking about how the North Pole, according to various climate models, which have garbage data in and produce garbage data out, will be ice-free in the summer. Oh, no, no. Oh, my God. So apparently, 3 winters of 2 standard deviations above normal snowfall in a row equate to melting because reasons. I don't know if you're aware of the most basic geology, but the way that the planet glaciates is snow falls in the winter and then doesn't fully melt in the summer. Greenland has had 9 feet of snow coast to coast all summer last year. We covered it every couple of days. Every time we saw a ridiculous article like this, trying to pull at your polar bear heartstrings, these insane animals that will stalk you for days to try to eat you in the Arctic, are not in danger of anything. And I don't know if you're aware about when Antarctica formed. Antarctica became icy about 33 million years ago. And guess what the global temperature was 33 million years ago when Antarctica began to glaciate? Wait for it, wait for it. 3 degrees C warmer than it is today. Antarctica glaciated when it was 3 degrees Celsius warmer than the current climate. So if you're scared about the North and South Poles melting, you've got way better things to be scared about. Be a COVIDiot, be scared, be frightened. It's a bunch of alarmist nonsense. People creating garbage in, garbage out models, and then wondering why they never come true. Now, Al Gore told me that Florida was going to be, 1/3 underwater by the year 2000. As I started studying climate change in 8th grade earth science in about 1987, and I believed all the hype until I found out that there's no correlation between global temperature and carbon dioxide. Then I started to ask questions. So anyway, let's get back to data. Here's the current jet stream environment of the Western world. And it looks like you're going to be getting some cold air injected into northern Alaska there, as well as extreme meridional jet stream bends, probably making for a pretty cold day in northwestern Africa as well. Heavily concentrated jet stream right off of the east coast, right in this area. That's where your plane will go mighty quick. Next, we'll look at water vapor maps. Here's Europe and Africa. Here's the Far East and Oceania. Here's a lightning map. And there's where the lightning strikes are happening. It's pretty lightning-y. Pretty lightning-y out there by Bermuda. Check it out. Please leave a comment if you're viewing the video from Bermuda. Hey, Hamilton. I think there's thunder rolling in. Bermuda, one of the weirdest places in the world, it borders the Sargasso Sea, the only sea in the world that's not held in by land. It's where eels go to reproduce. And they swim all the way from places like the Lehigh River out to Bermuda. Sounds crazy, right? Well, it's true, folks. It's true, to quote Kurt Angle. Next, looking at the U.S. Doppler radar map. There's where precipitation is currently happening. Here's the U.S. water vapor map. And we're going to look at Tennessee real quick. As there's a convergence going on there, I like to do things like forecast people's aircraft turbulence. So if you're flying north to south over Tennessee, that more massive dry air will cause you to gain altitude. So it's like running into a wall, folks. And anyway, there's that convergence zone. And let's move on, as there's still more stuff to cover as we talk about the SMASH team. And thanks for tuning in to the SMASH stream, SMASH team, like Kimberly and others. And we'll get that software to you soon, Kimberly. I've got it ready to send. I just have to upload it. So I'm going to send you one program at a time, probably Photoshop first. Yeah, so look forward to that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We got bonus features, and I just wanted to talk for a quick moment about switchtolinux.com. Thanks for your extreme patience, Tom. Now, I did a 1 hour long call with Tom yesterday, the owner of switchtolinux.com, and we talked about his YouTube channel, as he comes from a privacy perspective, and he's very interested in privacy, and that's largely why he's created a YouTube channel. And he covers lots of stuff about Linux, and we're going to get back to him as we failed to record the audio in yesterday's call. So sorry about that, Tom. We got things squared away now. And so maybe you download his ebook. It's WorldWherePress. That's WORLDWHERE press.com. And he's got a book that he wrote very quickly about lockdown. Perhaps read that. And what we're going to talk about are 3 OSs, mainly Peppermint, which is for your older computers. It's a Linux distribution that you can use on an older PC. Perhaps you got to resurrect one. Maybe there's one in the closet. Maybe you're on lockdown. If you got an old PC, try it. Also Ubuntu. These are all free open source alternatives to running things like Windows. So if you want to get real privacy, you got to run Linux. It's the only way around it. And let's get back to the bonus features. Here's a bonus feature. All of our Patreon posts, as well as our Subscribe posts, are 100% public through the month of April. So we're trying to do some fundraising here. That's the reason for it. Starting May 1st, we'll go back to the normal mode, where different tiers receive different benefits. So please consider supporting the content, as we need a lot more funding to accomplish our goals for the year 2020. So check us out at patreon.com and subscribestar.com. And also, go listen to Dr. Steelshank. It's at soundclick.com/Golden Cat Productions, my record label. And we've been making music since about 1999. I'll say the year 2000. And we're up to number 46 today on the instrumental rock subgenre with Dr. Steelshank. Here's a clip. It's got an extremely syncopated drum beat. So again, we're on Subscribestar, we're on Patreon. Please consider supporting us in those spots. Every little bit counts, and we do need your assistance indeed. Next, we're going to look at the local yellow dwarf. Here's the intensity gram showing you no ombre, hence no sunspots. And let's take a quick look at this region down here. Check it out. There is actually some magnetic organization going on there. Perhaps could turn into a sunspot today. It's something to keep an eye on. And when I say eye on, well, you get the idea. And let's look at it in 94 angstroms here, as I see a bright spot on the SDO page. Pretty cool. Anyway, here's 94 angstroms. Here's me vanishing. And saying, remember, folks, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you drink, don't drive. I don't want to see you out there on the road. I like traffic the way it is now. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Check out smashomash.com/forum. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.